"Your son is still alive," the maid's toddler whispered. The billionaire dropped the photograph and lost his voice. "Hey, stop scrolling for a second. Because what I'm about to tell you, I still get chills every single time I think about it." A 3-year-old little girl, the daughter of a housemaid. She couldn't even tie her own shoes yet. But she walked up to one of the most powerful men in America, looked him dead in the eyes, and whispered 4 words that completely shattered his world. 4 words that made a billionaire drop everything in his hands and lose his voice entirely. Nobody in that room understood what just happened. But everything, absolutely everything, was about to change. Welcome back, beautiful souls, to this channel, the place where real human stories touch your heart and remind you that life is far more miraculous than we ever imagine. Before we dive into this incredible story today, I want to ask you something. Where in the world are you watching from right now? Drop your city and country down in the comments. I genuinely love knowing where our amazing family is tuning in from. Now, what you're about to hear is one of the most emotional, jaw-dropping, and deeply heartwarming stories I have ever told on this channel. It involves loss, loneliness, a secret that was buried for years, and a tiny little girl who somehow, knew something she had absolutely no business knowing. Stay with me, because this one is going to stay with you for a very long time. Sometimes the loneliest people in the world are the ones surrounded by everything money can buy. Marcus Hale was 38 years old, and by every measure the world uses to define success, he had won. His name appeared on the covers of Forbes and Fortune. His real estate empire stretched across 14 states. His penthouse in downtown Chicago sat 52 floors above the rest of the world. Quiet, polished, and cold as marble. From the outside, Marcus Hale had it all. But from the inside, Marcus Hale was a man who hadn't smiled, truly smiled, in 4 years. It had been exactly 4 years since the accident. 4 years since the phone call that split his entire life into 2 halves, the before and the after. He didn't talk about it. Not to his business partners. Not to his attorneys. Not to the therapist he stopped seeing after the 3rd session because she kept asking him to feel things he had locked away in a room inside himself and thrown away the key. He certainly didn't talk about it to the household staff. Marcus ran a large estate just outside of Naperville, Illinois. A sprawling property with manicured gardens, a private lake, and a staff of 7 people who kept everything running like clockwork. He had a head chef, 2 groundskeepers, a personal assistant named David who anticipated his every need, and a housekeeper named Rosa. Rosa Mendez had worked for Marcus for 2 years. She was quiet, efficient, and deeply professional. Exactly the kind of employee Marcus preferred. She didn't chatter. She didn't ask questions. She showed up at 7 in the morning. She did her work with grace and care. And she left by 4 in the afternoon without ever disturbing the particular silence Marcus had built around himself like a fortress. What Marcus didn't know, what he had never bothered to ask about, was that Rosa had a daughter. Her name was Lily. Lily Mendez was 3 years old, with big dark eyes, 2 uneven pigtails, and a laugh that sounded like wind chimes caught in a summer breeze. Lily was the kind of child that made strangers in grocery stores stop and smile without knowing why. She had that quality, an openness, a brightness, as though she hadn't yet learned that the world could be heavy. Rosa had never brought Lily to work. She had a neighbor who watched her daughter during the day. But one Thursday morning in late October, the neighbor called in sick. Rosa had no backup, and after 20 minutes of desperate phone calls, she made a decision she hoped Mr. Hale would never have to know about. She brought Lily with her. She tucked her daughter into the small staff sitting room near the back of the kitchen with coloring books, a juice box, and strict instructions. "Stay here, Mija. Do not wander. Do not make noise. Mama will check on you every few minutes." Lily nodded very seriously, the way 3-year-olds do when they have absolutely no intention of actually listening. For the first 2 hours, everything was fine. Rosa moved through the house efficiently, polishing the grand staircase banister, refreshing the flower arrangements in the foyer, working her way methodically through the east wing. She checked on Lily twice. Both times, Lily was exactly where she was supposed to be, crayons in hand, tongue poked out in concentration. The third time Rosa checked, the sitting room was empty. The coloring book was still open. The juice box sat half-finished on the table. But Lily was gone. Rosa's heart dropped straight through the floor. She moved through the kitchen quickly, quietly, whispering her daughter's name with a panic she was desperately trying to keep contained. She checked the hallway, pantry, the laundry room, and then she heard it. Small voice, coming from somewhere deeper in the house. From the direction of the one place Rosa had always instinctively kept away from, the West Wing, the private wing, Marcus Hale's personal study. What would you do in that moment? If you were Rosa, what would be running through your mind? Rosa moved toward the voice. And what she found when she turned the corner made her breath catch so hard she had to press her hand over her mouth to keep from crying out. There was Lily, standing in the open doorway of Marcus Hale's private study. And there was Marcus Hale himself, sitting perfectly still behind his desk, staring at her 3-year-old daughter as though he had seen a ghost. The look on a grown man's face when a toddler stops him cold, that's not something you ever forget. For a long moment nobody moved. Marcus Hale sat behind his mahogany desk, a man who had negotiated billion-dollar deals without flinching, who had fired executives without blinking, who had stared down market crashes and hostile takeovers with the calm of someone who simply did not feel fear. And yet right now, staring at this tiny girl in pigtails standing in his doorway, he looked completely undone. Lily, for her part, was not afraid at all. She stood with one small hand resting on the doorframe, studying Marcus with those enormous dark eyes, tilting her head slightly to the side the way children do when they're working something out in their minds. Rosa appeared behind her daughter a breath later, face flushed, reaching down to scoop Lily up. "I am so sorry, Mr. Hale. I am so deeply sorry. She was in the back room and I turned around for just one moment and I will take her home right now. I promise this will never happen again." "It's fine." His voice was quiet, flat, but his eyes hadn't moved from Lily. "Mr. Hale, I truly apologize. I should have told you she was here today. I had no one to watch her and Rosa." His voice was still quiet, but there was something underneath it, something fragile. "It's fine. You don't need to explain." Rosa slowly straightened. Lily balanced on her hip, watching her employer carefully. Marcus was still looking at her daughter. After a long silence, Lily did what 3-year-olds sometimes do. She reached out toward Marcus, fingers spread wide, the way small children reach for things they simply want to touch because the world is still wonderfully uncomplicated to them. "Hi," she said simply. Something moved across Marcus Hale's face. Something complicated and painful and real. For just a second, one unguarded second, Rosa saw it. "Hi," he said back. And his voice, when he said that single word to her daughter, cracked slightly at the edges. Rosa quietly shifted Lily back toward the door. "We'll get out of your way. What's her name?" Rosa paused. "Lily." Marcus nodded slowly. His jaw tightened. He looked back down at the papers on his desk. "You can keep her in the sitting room for the day." "That's fine. Thank you, Mr. Hale. Thank you so much." He turned to go. "Rosa." He stopped. He didn't look up. His voice was carefully controlled again, back behind the wall. "How old is she?" "She just turned 3, sir. Last month." Marcus Hale nodded once. He said nothing else. Rosa carried Lily back to the sitting room, settled her back in with her coloring books, and stood in the hallway for a long moment with her hand pressed flat to her chest, trying to steady her breathing. There had been something in that room. Something she couldn't name. Something in the way Marcus Hale had looked at her little girl that wasn't just surprise or mild inconvenience. It was recognition. Raw and painful and private. like he was seeing something he had lost. Over the following weeks, a quiet shift happened in the Hale estate, so subtle that Rosa almost wondered if she was imagining it. Marcus stopped working quite so late on the days Rosa brought Lily along, which, after that first Thursday, happened more and more often as winter set in and arrangements fell through. He never made it a point, never announced it. But on those days, Rosa would occasionally catch him pausing at the door of the sitting room on his way past. Just for a moment, just long enough to see Lily bent over her drawings, talking softly to herself in that private running commentary that toddlers maintain with the universe. He never went in, but he always paused. And Lily, with the extraordinary social radar of very small children, always seemed to sense it. She would look up from her drawings and wave at the doorway, even when Rosa couldn't see anyone standing there. "Who are you waving at, baby?" Rosa asked one afternoon. "The sad man," Lily said simply, and went back to her drawing. Have you ever noticed how children sometimes see the things in people that the rest of us work so hard to hide? Rosa told herself it was nothing. Children said things. Children noticed things in their wide, unfiltered way and gave them names that didn't mean anything. The sad man. It was just Lily being Lily. But Rosa kept thinking about it. Kept thinking about the look on Marcus Hale's face that first morning in the study. Kept thinking about the way his voice cracked on that one small word. And she began to wonder, quietly, privately, without asking a single question, what exactly it was that Marcus Hale had lost. What Lily did next was something no one in that house, or anywhere, could have ever prepared for. It was a Friday in early December. Cold and gray outside. The kind of Illinois winter afternoon that presses down on the sky like a heavy hand. Rosa was finishing up in the upstairs hallway when she realized, with a now familiar drop of the stomach, that she couldn't hear Lily. She found her in less than a minute this time, but where she found her stopped Rosa completely cold. Lily had wandered into the west wing again. But she hadn't stopped at Marcus's study. She had gone further in. She was standing in front of a closed door at the very end of the hallway, a door Rosa had never seen open in 2 years of working in this house. A door that had no dust on the handle from being touched, but somehow still felt sealed from the inside, like a room that had been held shut by something other than a lock. And Marcus was there. He was standing 10 feet from his own daughter, no, from Lily. He was standing 10 feet from Lily, completely still, and he was holding a photograph in both hands. Rosa could see from where she stood that his hands were shaking. She didn't know where the photograph had come from. She didn't know how long he'd been standing there. But Lily was looking up at him with those serious dark eyes, and she was saying something too quiet for Rosa to catch from down the hall. Rosa moved closer, slowly, carefully, not wanting to break whatever strange, fragile thing was happening in that hallway. And then she heard it. Lily's small voice, clear and calm and completely certain, the way children are certain about things before the world teaches them to doubt. "Your son is still alive." The photograph fell from Marcus Hale's hands. It hit the floor face up and Rosa, close enough now, could see it. Little boy, maybe 2 years old in the picture. Dark hair, a wide laughing smile. Sitting in a patch of sunlight somewhere, reaching up toward whoever was holding the camera. Marcus Hale did not pick up the photograph. He stood there, completely still, looking at Lily. And Rosa, watching him, saw something happen to this man that she had never seen happen to anyone. He simply came apart. Not loudly, not dramatically. He didn't collapse or cry out. He just lost all the held-together stillness he'd been carrying for 4 years, like a wall giving way to water. His face crumpled. His shoulders dropped. His breath came out of him in a long, broken exhale. He lost his voice completely. Rosa didn't move. She couldn't. Lily reached out and patted Marcus's hand once. Small, matter-of-fact, gentle. The way she patted Rosa's hand when she thought her mama was sad. Then she turned and walked back down the hallway toward Rosa as calmly as if she'd simply gone to return something that had been left behind. Rosa picked her daughter up, held her tight, looked over Lily's shoulder at Marcus Hale, still standing motionless at the end of the hallway. "Mr. Hale," Rosa said softly. She didn't know what else to say. His eyes found hers. They were wet. He looked, for the first time since she had ever known him, not like a billionaire, just like a man who was in tremendous pain and had been for a very, very long time. "My son," he said, and his voice was barely there at all. "He was in the accident 4 years ago. They never found." He stopped, pressed his hand over his mouth for a moment. "They told me he was gone, but they never found." He couldn't finish. Can you imagine carrying that for 4 years, not knowing? What would that kind of uncertainty do to a person? Rosa held her daughter tighter and felt something she couldn't fully explain. A certainty that whatever had brought Lily down that hallway, whatever had made a 3-year-old girl stop in front of a sealed door and say those 4 words to a broken man, it wasn't random. It wasn't coincidence. Some things don't have rational explanations. And maybe they don't need one. The truth, when it finally surfaces, doesn't always arrive the way you expect. Sometimes it arrives in the voice of a child. Marcus Hale spent that entire weekend making phone calls. Rosa only knew this because David, his assistant, mentioned it carefully on Monday morning, that Mr. Hale had been on the phone almost continuously since Friday evening. Calls to the private investigator he had retained after the accident. Calls to the hospital in Michigan where he and his son had been taken 4 years ago after the car went off the highway in a blizzard. Calls to caseworkers. Calls to agencies. Calls to people who had been quietly paid for years to keep searching, even when hope had thinned to almost nothing. His son's name was Eli Hale. 2 years old at the time of the accident. Dark hair, his mother's eyes, and a laugh, according to every photograph Rosa had since been allowed to see, that could light up a room. Marcus's wife, Claire, had been driving. She had not survived the crash. Marcus, badly injured, had been airlifted to a different hospital. By the time he was conscious and coherent enough to ask about Eli, the story he received was devastating and murky in ways that had never stopped haunting him. The boy had not been found at the scene. The assumption, given the conditions and the severity of the crash, was that he had not survived. But there had never been any confirmation. Just absence. Just the terrible blank space where certainty should have been. So Marcus had done what broken men with unlimited resources sometimes do. He had kept searching, quietly, obsessively, without telling anyone, because hope, when it's that fragile, doesn't survive being spoken out loud. He had kept the door to Eli's room closed because opening it meant something he wasn't ready to face either way. He had kept the photograph because it was the last one taken, the day before everything ended. And then a 3-year-old girl had walked down his hallway and told him what no investigator, no caseworker, no search effort had been able to tell him in 4 years. The calls Marcus made that weekend found something. Child. A little boy, now 6 years old, who had been found injured and unconscious in a ravine a mile from the crash site on the night of the accident, found by a local man who had called emergency services, and who had been taken to a small county hospital and listed, in the chaos of a blizzard night, under an incomplete intake. A child who, when the early efforts to identify him hit dead ends, a devastated father in another hospital, an unresponsive search, had eventually been placed in foster care in a small town in northern Michigan. He needed to see him. Rosa found out because Marcus told her himself, something she absolutely had not expected. He came to find her on that Tuesday morning, and he stood in the kitchen doorway. This man who barely spoke, who kept the entire world at arm's length, and he said, "I owe you something. I owe your daughter something. I don't know how to explain what happened. I'm not sure I need to. But I want you to know, I may have found my son." Rosa pressed her hand over her heart. Her eyes filled immediately. "I have to go to Michigan," he said. "I'll be in touch with David about the estate. Take whatever time off you need while I'm gone." He started to turn away. "Mr. Hale." Rosa's voice stopped him. He looked back. She was struggling with the words, emotions she hadn't expected pressing up hard. "I hope he's yours," she finally said. "I really, truly hope so." Marcus Hale, billionaire, fortress, untouchable, nodded once. And the look on his face in that moment was something Rosa knew she would never forget for the rest of her life. It was the look of a man allowing himself very carefully to hope. Would you have believed Lily? If you were Rosa, would you have let yourself believe that something that extraordinary could be real? Some miracles don't announce themselves. Some of them walk in on small, uneven pigtails and change everything. The DNA results came back on a Thursday morning, 3 weeks after Marcus Hale had driven to a small town in northern Michigan and sat across from a 6-year-old boy with dark hair and his mother's eyes. It was a match. Eli Hale was alive. He had been alive for all 4 years that his father had been living in a penthouse 52 floors above the world, holding a photograph with shaking hands, keeping a door at the end of a hallway sealed shut because opening it required a kind of courage that grief sometimes simply takes away from us. The legal process that followed was complex and emotional. It always is, in cases like this, where a child has formed bonds with foster family members who genuinely love him and where the reunion requires enormous care. Marcus navigated it all with a patience that surprised even David, who had worked alongside him through high-stakes negotiations that would have tested anyone. He was patient because for the first time in 4 years, he could afford to be. For the first time in 4 years, he was not racing against the possibility that hope might run out. Hope had already arrived. In the form of a 6-year-old boy who, the moment he met Marcus for the second time, the first conscious, the first real, had tilted his head to the side in a way that made Rosa, when Marcus later described it to her, cover her mouth and cry. Because it was exactly the way Lily tilted her head when she was working something out. The way children do. The way all children do. In the months that followed, the Hale estate changed. The door at the end of the West Wing hallway opened. Slowly, carefully, Marcus and Eli began to build something that had been interrupted. A relationship that had to be patient and gentle and honest with itself about how much work healing really takes. Eli was not a photograph anymore. He was a little boy who liked dinosaurs and hated broccoli and woke up from bad dreams and needed to be held and was, slowly day by day, learning to trust that this tall, quiet man was safe to love. And Marcus, slowly day by day, was learning to be a father again. Learning to come down from 52 floors above the world and live in it. Rosa kept working at the estate. She had never considered leaving. But things were different now. Better. Warmer. The house had a sound to it that it hadn't had before. Footsteps and voices, and occasionally something that sounded very much like laughter. And Lily, small, bright, completely unaware of the magnitude of what she had done, remained entirely herself. She colored in her books. She waved at doorways. She patted hands when people seemed sad. One afternoon, a few months after Eli came home, Rosa was cleaning in the sitting room when she heard her daughter and Eli in the garden outside. She stopped to watch through the window. Eli was showing Lily something in the grass. A bug, probably, or a rock. And Lily was bent over examining it with that serious full-body concentration she brought to everything. Marcus was watching too, from across the garden. Standing a few feet away, hands in his pockets. Just watching his son. And he was smiling. Really smiling. The kind of smile that had been missing from his face for 4 years. The kind that reaches a person's eyes and changes the whole shape of them. Rosa felt the tears come before she could stop them. She didn't try. Because here was the thing Rosa understood. Standing at that window, watching a little girl who couldn't tie her shoes change a billionaire's entire world. We spend so much time believing that wisdom, understanding, and the deepest kind of knowing belong to the experienced, the educated, the powerful, the old. We build our walls up high and we trust only what we can verify and explain, and we forget so completely, that sometimes the truth arrives in its purest form through the most unexpected messengers. Child with no agenda, no angle, no fear of what wisdom costs. Just wide-open eyes and 4 quiet words. Your son is still alive. There are things in this world that we cannot explain. Moments of connection, of knowing, of grace that arrive outside the boundaries of what's reasonable and rational and expected. And we can spend our whole lives building walls against those moments. Or we can do what Marcus Hale finally learned to do, in the last year of his long loneliness. We can let them in. The moral of this story is not that miracles are guaranteed. It's that they become possible the moment we stop sealing our doors shut, literally or otherwise. The moment we let a little grace walk in, unannounced, on uneven pigtails. The moment we are brave enough to hope. If this story moved you even a little, if it gave you chills or made your eyes wet, or made you think about the people in your life differently, please give it a like right now. Not for me. But because stories like this deserve to travel. Because somewhere out there, someone needs to be reminded that the people who change our lives most profoundly sometimes arrive in the smallest, most unexpected packages. Subscribe to this channel if you haven't already, because this is the kind of story we tell here. Real, human, heartwarming, and every single one will stay with you. Drop a comment below. I want to know. Did you believe Lily? From the beginning, did you feel that she knew something? Tell me. I read every single one. And share this story with a friend, a parent, a sibling, someone who needs to be reminded today that life is still miraculous. That hope is still worth keeping. Thank you for watching. Thank you for being here. And I'll see you in the next one.